Nothing excites me more than sitting with newcomers, and I hate to use the word newcomers, but there's nothing more exciting for me to discover in independent music than a very, very promising debut. And more than a promising debut is what Ananya Sharma has delivered in 2024 with her amazing album, A Junkyard Wonder. Welcome, Ananya, to On VJ's playlist. I am very excited, and more than that, I think I'm very happy that you've agreed to do this interview. How are you? And welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm so grateful that you reached out. I mean, I'm doing all right. I think the last few months, and actually, it's only been a month now that I think about it. Almost a little more than a month that the album's come out, and but this season is always so busy, and things have been coming up kind of out of nowhere as well. So I don't think I actually had a moment to like process that it released. And now, actually, I was telling my friend the other day that I still haven't heard it. As
You
in,
haven't heard your
I
own
still
album
no, I haven't heard it on any of the streaming
on
platforms, like from top to bottom. Yeah. I just haven't had a chance to just sit down and listen. I just trusted that, I was the one who submitted the masters. So I just trusted that I'm sure everything's okay, when it released. I did double check. I was like, I'm sure it's fine. Or if someone hears something, they'll tell me. But I just didn't have the energy so far to really listen back. But I'm really grateful that, this response has been really sweet, and this conversation, I mean, it's like an honor for me to just have a chance to talk about the music with someone who knows a lot about music and is passionate about amplifying music. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Pleasure is mine. Ananya, but does it also stem from a place where you've spent considerable time, working on each and every single that comprises your album? And somewhere, I feel, a lot of artists have spoken about this. At some point, it's like, you are just done and exhausted with having worked on every song and, like mastered and mixed it about 10 times before finally putting out that one, final edit that you're convinced of. And you know that this is what is going to eventually work on every DSP as per their requirements and as per their it like it'll conform with what every platform likes to showcase. But it does is it, I mean, the fact that you said that you haven't heard your own album in entirety after its release, does it also stem from a place of like, okay, I'm actually in a very tired space right now, and I want to take my time to actually bring myself to hear and see what it comes across as.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of definitely the production process and like the time that it's taken you to create something and to see it through to the finish line. I mean, as an independent artist, like we all know this, we're having to take on so many roles beyond just making the music. And it's like it took me 2 years to produce the album, and then it took me like, I guess, since 2019 is when I started writing the music, right? So it's, in fact,
Boy,
the only reason I also was, yeah, so it's like it's been a long journey in terms of like the very first song, like when it was written, till like the point that it was done and I submitted, like click on a wall or whatever. It's like that was already its own journey. Then also I find it very difficult to to say look at me and listen to my music and take up space in a way which is which is like, yeah, this is worth listening to, and give it a like or give it a share. Like I find it hard to put forward the music in a way where I'm asking people to do that, but also I know that's a big part of the job, and that's something I have to do given the fact that I'm working independently. So the last few weeks, and obviously after putting out the music, it's been a lot about finding the space where how do I do this in my own way, and that is also, I think, the energy that you put
yeah.
into figuring that out, it also sometimes, I think for me, takes away from being able to just realize that, oh yeah, the music is done. It's actually the things that I am supposed to have control over, which is the product, and product is not the word I would use, but the art and
They
like
are.
the making of it. That I've done, and I should take a moment to enjoy it. But yeah, since so much keeps coming up, maybe I feel in a few months when I have enough space from it, also from the perspective of performing the music. Like now I've been arranging it the last like 2 months for the band and everything. So it's like you have no space. It's almost like a relationship, I think. I'm starting to realize it's like my partner. Like I'm always just with the album. I'm like surrounded by it in some way or another. So I think there's scope to get a bit disconnected, but not necessarily in a bad way. It's just like space.
So, well, you had the opportunity of showcasing, or rather, in a very wonderful way, preview the album at the G5A recently in November. How was that experience? Because you performed with a 10-piece band, I believe. All these amazing artists who have been your collaborators, I believe, from the time you begin. There's Priscilla, there's Anurag, Shashank.
Yeah.
How was that experience, firstly, and how did it feel performing to a space now, a dedicated space like G5A now, which is really blossoming as the venue now for a lot of art and culture to be, showcased?
Oh, it was amazing. It was like they got the opportunity because of their warehouse performance grant. And I remember when I was writing the proposal for the application, I was like, I'll write everything I want, as in everything I want to do, and exactly the way I envision it, which is why the 10 piece, Because as you can hear on the album, there's so much orchestration, um, and there's so many textures, and I think I come from a place where I want these, in a live space, I want these textures to be embodied by people, and I want them to play the parts, and I want them to sort of reinterpret. So even when I play the album live, I don't necessarily want it, like, obviously, there are things that are written, right? And things that are decided, but I don't necessarily want it to be exactly like it is on the record. I want that to be some breathing space for the musicians, and that's where like magic happens on stage, and it happens because of the people you're playing with, which is where also my band is like a huge part of the whole equation, because all the people like that played on this gig are people that I look up to in some way or another. And they are so much more experienced than me. Every single one of them, I think, is so much more experienced than me, and um, just like, masters and in what they do. So it was amazing to actually then get the grant, like feel like, oh, I'm dreaming a bit, like, I'm kind of taking a risk by being like, oh, I want to put forward such a big band. I already felt like that's already a risk. That's probably not going to get me the grant, because who does that or whatever. But when they actually gave me the opportunity, I was like very encouraged, and that's when I realized it. I think all it takes is a push, or like one vote of confidence, and like you feel, oh cool, if like this person or this venue can give you a chance, then this is worth like pursuing, this is worth putting effort into, getting these people on board. And the show was very well received. I mean, it was a first for me to arrange all the music, and to have all like these people. Obviously a lot of them have played with each other in other contexts, but in this context of like really written music and arranged and whatever, it was also, I think, a first in some ways for like different people in the band. So it was like just an experience of its own, and like a big learning experience for me also. So I'm really happy with the way that show went, and with all that it like taught me, and I guess also gave me the confidence to like push forward to do from this point onwards. So yeah, I'm grateful to shout out to David Brito and like the G5A clan for that.
Well, a little before we, sort of deep dive into your album, Ananya, I also believe that rather not believe, rather in my experience, I think the first time I saw you perform live was at Kamakshi's gig, her Mumbai gig as part of her tour, where you did the backing vocals alongside Bristler, who was also handling sax duties. And I thought there was such perfect coordination, there was such sync, and it's like, um, I think there were already such amazing songs that Kamakshi had as part of a set list. And at the same time, I think the entire band that came together was a very different energy. Like for me, the success, or rather the highlight of that particular show, um, in my very humble and personal opinion, was how the band really beautifully complemented Kamakshi's vision. And I want to ask your, thoughts about how was that experience? The fact that it could be one of your very um, initial exposures in a way now to an audience, which is now um, likely to, see what you have to offer. That, okay, there is also a glimpse of you somewhere as a part of that entourage. So, how was that experience?
Yeah, I mean, also for like shout out to Kamakshi because I mean that was a huge like I love her music and I've followed her for years. In fact, at some point, probably I think she even taught me a class in TSM or something. But yeah, I could. You're totally right about the fact that even when we were at rehearsals for that gig, the support was very strong, and that openness to like hear each other out, and you always have, I don't know, things to troubleshoot in any preparation, right, for a gig. But I think in those moments when you can, as a band, if people can sort of open up and just be receptive, that's the most important thing. And that's what I felt also for my show, in preparing for it and having everything sort of be live and also be so dependent on interpretation as well. Some things were very strict that I written out, but some things I think I tried, to create space for the musicians. And I think it's, that's at some point I just trusted everyone because that's the most important. I don't like that's the glue, to anything, because you can, and as a band leader or as a, composer or something, you can be super glued to like what your vision is. But then if you can't see beyond that, and you can't see beyond, things basically that are not in your control, and things that also you can't imagine musically. Like there's things when Sanjay plays my music, it's like it's something else, and he'll always play things which I'm just like, man, how would I have envisioned, like, there's no way that I would have thought of that line, or I would have thought of even like a small fill, like 2 seconds, and there are music, like there are moments in, I was watching back the video from the G5A gig, and I was like, some places where Sanjay or Shirish or, someone plays something, and I just look in like pure admiration. I'm like, what? Did you do that in this moment? So anyway, for the gig and for this live, I don't know if I answered your question, but I think my point is kind of like the support of a band is, and understanding is like the most important.
I think you pretty much summed it up when you said that, it is about reception. It is about how accepting everyone is, to be on the same page with each other. I think, Ananya, much of the album was also recorded during your days at, the Berkeley campus in Valencia. Tell us about that,
Yeah.
because, it's very interesting to note that you have recorded so much of the album while you're pursuing your further studies in music. For our viewers who aren't aware, Ananya is a Vijay Bhumi, alumni, and then she eventually went to the Valencia campus in of Berkeley in Spain to pursue her, masters, I believe, in songwriting and production. Uh, so, how was the fact that there was such freedom to create A, and B, also there was a lot of freedom and space given to you to nurture and develop and put some of what you were learning theoretically to actually
Yeah.
practice and to use for yourself.
Yeah, the course was amazing. I went in, I think, end of 22. So when I got in, and I decided to go over there for my master's. And actually, I kind of knew while applying for the course, because since it's a master's course, they always have thesis, and it's a 1 year course, actually 10 months even. So they have that concept of you finish the year with your thesis. So I kind of knew when I was applying, since my program was performance and music production, and it had a bit of both, even though I guess more of focus on vocal or performance. I knew that we get to learn things about production, which is something I've always wanted to do. Like I, I love. I love knowing different parts of the creative process, other than just composing and like putting things in the DAW and all of that as well. So I decided at some point that, especially as when I was trying to get some sponsors, like for my study, to get sponsorship and to like make this legit, I knew that I would basically make my thesis my album. So that was kind of how I pulled that off, is because I knew I had at least, actually at the time I had 12 songs written. And I was like, maybe I can, based on how the pace of the program is and how well I fit in and how much I have to work and kind of, sorry about that.
That's
um,
okay.
yeah, I was so distracted. But yeah, based on those things, I can kind of figure out like how the album is going to shape up, and if I will actually be able to make, the other thing you feel is, as a student, because you're experimenting and you're trying out different things. And for me, I met the co-producer of my album there, who was in the production program, and he was like such an essential collaborator and help in shaping the sound of the album, especially all the live recorded elements. So those kinds of collaborations, then all the musicians who played from my program, it just, being in the program just created a lot of accessibility for me to people who have different skill sets and who are willing to kind of sit together and shape and mold, my ideas and kind of my vision. So by the end of, the way I kind of did it was, every assignment or every recording assignment we would have, I'd be like, okay, this is going to be a song, and I'm going to like work around like how to arrange it. So yeah, it was, I think, Berkeley and rather that community was a huge tool in just making this happen, because I'm not that, like, I always imagined that the first, which is probably why it took so long, but I always imagined the first album I would put out, or music that I would record, it would always have live recorded instruments, and that's a really big part of my sound, I think, and really big part of like stuff I want to explore artistically. um, so yeah, I think the course like helped open these doors. Maybe in Mumbai, if I was just doing this here, like, would have been hard. I think harder
I
in some ways.
I can gauge that. But Ananya, I believe you definitely don a lot of hats. I mean, you're obviously you're a vocalist, you're a songwriter, but you're also into production, you're into engineering, and it's very interesting to know that you're an artist who wants to do all of it. And that somewhere also, I remember asking this question in my interview to Sudan, that where he spoke about one of the reasons why it also took him equally about 2 years to release his debut earlier this year was also the fact that he wanted to personally ensure uh, that every song is mixed and mastered a certain way. There is a certain knowledge of the process that he has an idea about, and it's not coming from a place where he knows only one aspect about making a song, and there's somebody else taking care of the additional responsibilities. So in your case also, was that the case also where you decided, okay, I need to at least have an idea about every aspect about making a song so that um while I know I'm making it myself, before I end up approaching somebody maybe for a second opinion or for any additional input, at least I have a fair idea about how a song undergoes every process.
Yeah, definitely. I think I've always had that sense of ownership in my music where and I think this comes more from being a composer, like I hear more than just in writing a song. I think it's like lyrics, melody, harmony, hits, like arrangement. Like there's so many things that come with songwriting for me already that are encompassed in that, which actually I think also embody a big part of the execution process, in like bringing musicians, getting them to do their thing and stuff. But I think in my case also there's a lot of taking a step back also in each step, because for example, like since again I had the co-producer like Jorge, who's like a violinist based in LA, and was part of the program, Ishan, who mastered the music. I mean, I'm not a mastering engineer, I know nothing about, I mean, I know basics, or I know
Yeah.
how it works, or and then Nick Hard, who mixed the album, who's literally my hero. He's someone I've been an assistant engineer to since finishing Berkeley, and he's mixed like my idols like Becca Stevens and Snarky Puppy and all these people. So, and I mean, just other than that, Nick is like one of the most, I don't know, intuitive and kind and chill, like people to work with. So, so yeah, in certain steps, I would say, especially that post production kind of realm of like mixing, mastering, I actually literally just gave it. I told Nick, do your thing. Ishan, do your thing, because I didn't want to. I think by then also so much time had passed, that I don't think I was in a place to like micromanage that. Even though I do know things about mixing, or I mix myself, but for other contexts, for example. So yeah, I think just maybe when it came to other, like the initial parts of the thing that I did completely by myself, I would say, is the writing and the composition. Where like just I knew that okay, the song, this is what the song is, and this is the concept, this is the idea, this is going to be the arrangement. And of course, maybe I ran the arrangements, like when I brought the musicians into the studio, we would run it, and then we would find like, oh, this could change a little bit, or this can be adjusted in a certain way to like sound better on an instrument, like strings or whatever. And then also maybe like Jorge would sometimes recommend like, oh, you can, for string writing, since he's a violinist, like such a good arranger, so would suggest some things with that. So it was always, although I took a lot of leadership, let's say, in each part of the process, I think it all kind of also depended on the other people who are involved in helping me execute it, from musicians to tech team, engineers, all of that. So bit of both.
When I listen to the album, Ananya, there is, I believe that every song speaks about the stage of a person's development of character and development of strength in a way. When I listen to The Cure, when I listen to Fall, when I listen to Teardrops, Here, which is such an apt title for, somebody who just wants to be in the present for the moment, take a moment and just decipher what's happening currently and not really think about what has happened or what will happen. Uh, Somewhere it makes me wonder why does the culmination of all of this leads to the album being titled A Junkyard Wonder. Is it also from an idea of presenting the artist as somebody who is raw, who is in the process of learning, but also who is very assured and confident in a sort of an unsure way. Like, it's almost, it's actually a bit of a paradox over here. But just the fact that here's an artist who is assured of who she is as an artist, but also she wants to explore. She is curious. She is willing to make mistakes along the way and learn through them.
You actually said it. That's pretty much the idea. Um, it's like, yeah, actually, the way I would say it also for myself is kind of, I think there's a lot of value in knowing that you have something to say, and you have something to share. Like,
Yeah.
I think as artists, we can often put a lot of pressure on something being perfect, and especially when you put yourself in an environment, especially like a music school or in a certain community amongst
Yeah.
musicians who are more experienced, like you feel that pressure of things turning out to sound professional and to sound like kind of industry standard, and like there's so many parameters we create for ourselves with respect to art. But I think somehow, maybe because of songwriting and because that's my jam, and that's like the thing that makes me want to do music, just to express myself. I find so much value in just having something to say, um, that I think that it doesn't necessarily have to be perfect, or have to be shiny, to be wonderful. Which is why I think of this idea of a junkyard wonder is sort of like also talking about self image, like outside of music and just the way that I look at myself. There's so many things I know that I have my whole life to become a better person. You know, but yeah, with all my imperfections and with all the things that I know that I can work on, and um, that I need to like work around as well, which are just part of who I am. And I can't necessarily change those things. I have to like grow into those things more and just, adapt. So it's sort of finding beauty in places you don't think it exists, basically. Which is how I often feel like I've seen myself most of my life. So a lot of the songs as well, the flaw, like the interludes, which are like the flaw, the discovery, and the cure. They kind of are these three stages of like self evaluation. Like the flaw is like, yeah, I hate myself. Like, it's like pure loathing, kind of. But the discovery is a bit like opening up and seeing what's around you, and taking things as they are, like realistically.
Learning facets
Um,
about yourself that you didn't know existed.
exactly, exactly. And the cure is, kind of the climax, which is like, oh, like there are things I love about myself. Like there are things that I would never let go about myself, because this is what makes me who I am, and this is what makes me valuable to the people in my life. You know. Um, so yeah, I think the Junkyard Wonder, like just that name, even though actually it's funny, it's never really used anywhere in the songs. Like that word or that phrase never comes lyrically anywhere. But I just felt like it's such an appropriate embodiment of like this feeling of imperfection is valuable, or is can be wonderful. So yeah.
It really interests me, or rather, it really amazes me in a way, Ananya, that spoken to artists before, who have such sound academic knowledge when it comes to making music. But what surprises me is that why are they, also harrowed by feelings of doubt and uncertainty in a day and age where there is enough mediocrity being peddled by artists who, like, you can just hear their songs and you can clearly tell that there has been no effort put in songwriting or in the way it has been produced, or it's absolutely, it's just that sort of music is what I would call just content created. But there is, but there's still a certain kind of virality or something. I don't know, whatever works in its favor,
Mm,
but you see those artists just flexing about and being very confident and just walking like as if they have really achieved immensely. And while I see a lot of gifted musicians just constantly, stay in this process, like you spoke about, where there's so much of second guessing, there's so much deliberation that goes into making that perfect song, which is in accordance with industry standards and everything. Why, in your opinion, is there such a paradox between, the two
Hmm.
extremes?
I don't know if this is the right thing to say, but I feel, um, I mean, for one, I think it has to do one with music, and then it has one to do with people. Just in music kind of terms, I actually think music is such a functional thing. Like it doesn't, there's music that makes you feel things in a contemplative way or in an introspective way. That's where I would honestly would want to hopefully place my music. That um, I don't think this album was made to be played at parties, or like in clubs. So, but that's because I recognize the functionality of my music, and I recognize the role that it may play emotionally for someone else. And I think all music like has even things which are, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that are sounding like content or whatever, right? Like, I think they also have some sense of functionality, or they have some sense of like merit or worth. It's just that I think the difference happens where the accessibility that music which was made for the purpose of entertainment or, you know, yeah, like for fun or whatever you want to say, like lightheartedness or whatever, it has easier access. And basically, when I, played this music for the first, I was very nervous for the concert because I also did know that actually there was a fair share of, non-musicians coming. And I think often you start to perceive when you spend enough time with your music, you start to perceive it in a certain way. I started to feel at some point that yeah, the music can sometimes be perceived as quite dense and quite brainy or a bit complex as well. And especially if musicians perceive it, they're going to have their own kind of view. So for the concert, that was the gray area for me. Is like, how is this actually going to sound to someone who is not a musician, and are they going to enjoy it, are they going to vibe with it or whatever? And there actually were, I think, a lot of people who came after the show, and they related to like songs that I really didn't expect, that I thought in my head like, oh, this was definitely a more complex song from the record, but they actually enjoyed it and they felt something when they heard that song. And I think those are moments where I felt that being seen, and I'm being like that sense of accessibility or that block between me and a non-musician who might usually consume something else, or they're being fed something else, right? They actually are getting access to me, and they're getting a chance to give me a chance and to give this music a chance and be like, okay, what is this, and I think a lot of good and underrated music, right, it gets to blossom when people can kind of maybe they see it on like randomly. I feel at a cafe or something, if they hear it and they're like, oh, it catches their attention, then they might like one of my songs actually, from like a single from way before. I think it's gotten views or whatever you want to say, like streams, because at some point, I think it was like Blue Tokai or someone, they reached out to put it on their playlists. And I realized, like, man, people have been shazamming this a lot. And I was like, wow, I would not have expected this song to be like found like this. But it's all about creating access, I think. And that's why we as artists, I think, sometimes feel we start to doubt ourselves because maybe we don't have the tools, especially when we're starting out, right? Like, you have to put yourself out there so much. And if you're not used to doing that, it's hard because you need support. You need someone who can tell you that we believe in you, we want to help you. This is where like that whole amplification and having music journalists, having like yourself, and having managements or whatever, like anyone who has a voice in this industry and who can help you reach bigger audiences, allow people to give you a chance, that's very important. But when we don't have that starting out, which is kind of common, you can kind of get warped into a sense of like, why is no one listening? Like, I've put so much effort into this, or, and not just effort, it's like there's so much thought or there's so much intention. Is it not coming through? Or all these other thoughts will start to kind of infiltrate and create doubt. But if you kind of look at things, putting aside the ego as well, and just knowing that, you did what you had to do, and whatever factors are within your control. Like, I know for my album, I did my best to make the music. I've been doing my best to kind of promote it afterwards by myself, and to try and get as many shows as I can. And I've been reaching out to, like, lovely people like you, and trying to get thoughts and just see like how people perceive it. So I feel like now I'm not that fear of what is going to happen with the album. It's going because I think I'm doing what is within my control and trying to create access for myself, So I have a feeling maybe that's, to kind of answer your original question, maybe that's what differentiates these things.
So in that way, Ananya, how do you view um, the dreaded word actually, the one I'm really, really very averse to, which is called statistics? Because I mean, we are just coming, about a week or 10 days after this whole charade was going on social media, where everyone is just sharing their
Oh.
raps, their ear raps, and or replaying whatever has been their top listing preferences in the entire year. And then you see everyone's favorites emerge. So how do you gauge all of this? Because it's also very funny in a way that your album has just released. You barely have a month or two to actually understand, at least when it comes to this year, as to how has your album fared. But then when I mean, I'm glad that you say that, when somebody like a Blue Tokai reaches out, because people are shazamming your songs, uh, what then becomes your marker of progress in a way?
um I don't know if this is a very like noob thing to say, but actually, this, what we're doing right now, or something like this, if any opportunity I get to meaningfully um, engage with someone over the music, that for me is like a huge thing. Like, after this interview, I'm gonna be so happy, because I'll be like, oh, someone cared about the music enough to actually reach out and actually want to hear more about it. The streams are great, obviously. Like, for example, like with Apple, I mean, so kind. They put, I think, two of the singles or something from the album, they put on a bunch of playlists. And I know that's a big deal because those playlists are like editorial and they have a lot of listeners. And same with Spotify as well. Like, I know that there was at least, I think, two songs that, fared on some playlists and things. So I feel like obviously it's nice when, people again who have the ability to place, when they actually pick your material up, you feel a sense of like, okay, this is sort of circulating and it's reaching people. But I don't think I'm personally like a numbers person. If I go to a gig and like after the gig, someone says something to me, like they either heard the music, or if it's obviously if at my own gig, if someone comes up to me and they say something to me about the music, I think those things mean a lot. And I also think, given the artists that I look up to, like, I look up, for example, to Becca Stevens. She is like, you know, I'm invested in her journey. Like, I literally will take every chance I can, to, I don't know, not just stream, obviously, but like maybe attend a listening session or be on her Patreon, or, do the things which are not part of the algorithm, let's say. They are like initiated by the artist, like newsletter things, or buying tickets to concerts. I mean, if she came here, I would, so so it's like this vibe where I think, although I appreciate streams and I appreciate when people share. And there's so many ways of showing support today because of the different tools that we have. But I think for me, it's like anyone who can, uh, express like a connection with the music. For me, that counts as a uh, big thing, and it makes me feel not that concerned about like, oh, like 1,000 people heard or 2,000, or I mean how many ever, I don't even know. I don't remember the last time I looked at
The
um,
stats.
my Spotify, yeah, or the other for
Well,
artist thing.
well, our dear girl has to just first sit and listen to her own music at leisure. And I think this is statistics are going to come, like, are going to figure in the scheme of things like a very, matter of the last kind of. It's I don't
Yeah,
think so. It figures anywhere in the priority list right now. Is that a fair assumption?
it's a fair. Actually, right now it's like the concerts. I would say if I am able to find ways to take this band and take this music live more often and more in more cities, that will make me feel better, as in it'll make me feel like I'm going somewhere with the album, and it'll make me feel like I'm progressing as opposed to like the streams, like it'll uh, in terms of reach or something, because that's like an active and physical step towards um, playing the music and reimagining it, and that's also really fun for me to do as an artist. So that's like the next priority right now, is just to kind of see venues who are interested in having us.
One of my favorite questions to ask at, usually towards the end of every interaction is to list artists that you have been listening to at leisure. And I'm talking about Indian independent artists that you have been listening to, whose music you have discovered lately. And it sort of, really thrills you that, somewhere at some point, um, you may want to know more about their journey, or you may want to, hear more music from them often, or even more wonderful. It's always amazing to see great talents come together for collaborations. So artists you're looking forward to collaborate, just artists, Indian independent artists that you have discovered in recent months, that you
Yeah.
really admire.
I, oh, there's so many. I'm gonna try and make this short. But see, from my own circle, Anurag Naidu, I cannot wait for him to put out his next album of piano, because his first album just destroyed me. And it was many years ago. There's obviously Sanjay Divecha, there's Bresila, who has amazing music, Queendom. Um, there's Meera. Actually, like in that space, at least Anurag and these people I've collaborated with. I would love to collaborate with Meera. Would love to collaborate with Anubha Kaul, and Tejas is like I'm a fan of his music. I would love to. I imagine some backing vocals vibes if ever that opportunity came. Malika Barar.
Tejas, I hope you're listening.
Malika has some music coming out. I would love to collaborate with her.
Yeah, I've
There's
been
some,
waiting for that, waiting for her music now for a while. So I hope Malika, I hope
yeah.
you're listening again.
I hope yeah. Obviously, and also like in the producer space, like Sudan, I love his music, and I'm a big like fan of his. Just I man, he's a vibe. He's a good friend of mine also. So I think it would be really fun to work together. And there's some new bands funny, like Echoes of Earth. Like I saw this band called Note Sick, which is like
Oh,
completely in the electronic space, but also very unique. So there's so many things like Shankar Tribe, and like I don't know. There's also things which are not in my realm necessarily, like genre wise, but I want to like branch out, and at some point, if I get to collaborate with people who are doing something completely different, and if I get to like lend myself to that, like that would be amazing as a musician. So anyway, this is my short list, but I'll share a long list on WhatsApp.
short list. But uh,
It's like so
as
many.
we conclude, Ananya, it's been So wonderful knowing a little more about you as the person behind the artistry that we see in A Junkyard Wonder. And like you have pretty much, already expressed that you're looking for more opportunities at this point to, take your little baby and, take it around and showcase it to the world. But if it's not premature to ask, what's next in the pipeline? What are the plans ahead now that we are also inching towards a new year?
Yeah, hopefully, I've already written my next album. Um,
That was fast. Or was it already in progress while you were?
it was. I think in the last, I think in June, I started writing it. And then by,
Man,
I think
quite the
July, I had the
pre-planning.
songs ready. Yeah, I just, I'm a very volatile person emotionally.
Oh,
And I think that's the songwriting, it's very connected to that part of my being. So whenever I feel like I am going through a lot, I like write and write. And well, fortunately or unfortunately, it came at a time last year, well, this year actually, sorry, um, that I was able to write a lot of songs. So I want to, yeah, ideally, I want to, tour is one thing soon, maybe early next year. But uh, other than showcasing this album, I want to like kind of put together the funds to do another album. And I'm hopeful that like there are some collaborators that I would want to bring on board, specifically like from my community back in Spain. So I'm just hoping, if there's any way to do that, just trying my best to like really figure out, those things. And maybe end of next year, I can, have another album ready and produced. But yeah, that's that for now, and hopefully a lot of collaborations, with like people that I'm already working with, and also a lot more engineering work. Hopefully, that's something I've been enjoying it so much. And there are some projects coming up in January and things, which I can't say much about right now because I don't know if they're gonna 100% happen. But yeah, just trying out new things as always.
well, all I would urge my viewers and listeners of great music who are watching is that let's give A Junkyard Wonder all the love and the appreciation that it deserves so that Ananya releases her next album, if not sooner, but it definitely encourages her to release it at the earliest in a way that makes it all worth the humongous effort and the humongous artistry that she puts through, her journey. But thank you so much, Ananya. It was such a joy to have this chat with you today. And more importantly, just know who you are behind the amazing songs that you have made through A Junkyard Wonder. And here's me at on VJ's playlist, wishing you all the very best ahead for a very, very um, fulfilling and successful journey ahead.
Thank you so much, VJ. I'm really grateful to be on here, and thanks for doing this. I mean, not just for me, but for all the artists that you've had. Like, this is something I watch. I mean, I watch quite religiously so that to kind of like find new artists and things. And I think it's really, I don't know, it's really valuable. And it's something that we need, not just musicians, but we all need for like people who love music. So thank you for having me.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much for watching, and we will return soon with another episode with another enterprising guest only on VJ's playlist. Keep watching.